If you were 2-7, you'd be in a bad mood too.
Whoa, he has trouble with the snap, and the ball is free. And he hits the upright again. That's impossible.
Get your mouth shut. Get your mouth shut. Jerk.
The Bears' season's going to end on a double doink.
If worms had machine guns, then birds wouldn't be scared of them.
Hey, how's everyone doing out there? Welcome to a Word Hole Media presentation of the Limp Six podcast. I'm Pete.
I'm Ryan. Welcome to the Limp Ditka's podcast. We're just a couple of Chicago pricks united by our hatred of University of Michigan football, number 2 in the country, and the Chicago Bears, who beat my Detroit Lions this week. Yeah, rough times for the LDP.
LDP's in shambles.
Yeah, we have an incredible show lined up tonight. We have a major news involving your Notre Dame Fighting Irish that is earth-shattering, and it's even ties into my experience as a college football fan. It ties into Maction, the Maction Minute almost. We have plenty to talk about with the college football committee's misguided attempt to rank the top 4 teams. We will correct that with our own Limp Six rankings. Lots to discuss there. I've got to talk about the Michigan State Spartans winning the land grant trophy over Penn State this week.
Now, when you win that, do they win land? Do they get a grant of land? Or?
We'll get into it. We'll get into that. It's ridiculous. Then we've got, of course, a recap of Thanksgiving Day Thanksgiving, as we are obviously fans of the Cowboys and Lions, who have been featured on Thanksgiving Day for the past 60 plus years. Didn't go so well for us.
Didn't go so well. No.
And then that's unfortunately, yeah. Then we've got some Bears information to go along with that Lions game. Yeah, so that's going to be fun. So let's go ahead and kick this motherfucker off.
Well, in case you hadn't heard, Brian Kelly, under contract with Notre Dame, is no longer the Notre Dame head coach, and instead he's gone to greener pastures, and that's greener by financial dollars,
Purpler pastures,
and probably a lot easier recruiting wise for him. Heads over to LSU for $100 million over 10 years. That includes a $1.2 million loan from the school so he can buy a home.
Yeah. I mean, it's rough these times. There's a big real estate bubble, so it's tough. You need that extra $1.5 million over your $1.2 million over your $100 million coming to you over the next 10 years.
Right. And what about the $2.7 million he made at Notre Dame this past season? That I found out was only $2.7 million because they allow him to keep 100% of any endorsement that he does that's approved by the school. So in a lot of cases, not all cases, because every coaching contract's unique, but normally the school gets a percentage of whatever endorsements you get because you're representing the school also because you're their coach. In the case of Brian Kelly, he gets 100% of any endorsement he does. He gets 100% of that. Any sort of
endorsement? I wonder if it's local. So I don't see a lot of national.
Yeah, it's not like Saban. Saban's got like the Aflac thing.
Yeah. Oh God. So, enough with Saban and the Aflac shit. I've seen way too many of those.
But yeah, I don't know what he's doing. I don't know how much he's making from that. But what I have been trying to figure out is even without that, at making $2.7 million a year. I mean, you got like a coke habit or something, buddy, or a gambling problem that you need to take a loan from the school to buy a house?
Yeah, that's odd. Oh, it's an interest-free loan, so it's I don't fully understand that.
Yeah,
transaction.
Yeah, but still,
I think he heard that some other coach got that deal, probably Nick Saban, so he wanted the same one. It's like, I'll write that into mine as well.
Yeah. I can't say I'm surprised.
Okay, that was my first question. I had no idea. I feel like the whole world has been blindsided by this.
No. I'm
surprised?
blindsided. I was surprised to hear like
at the moment
and
the timing
of it, and essentially maybe he timed it so he didn't end up in the playoffs, because like a lame duck coach, they tend not to favor well in even if certain teams were to lose ahead of Notre Dame this week, they may not get moved up in the playoff because of that situation.
That's going to be a hilarious scenario. We'll talk about the funniest scenarios that could happen in the playoff, but
if you think about it, I think he probably came to the realization he was never going to win a national championship at Notre Dame due to their restrictive recruiting policies with a lot of grade A talent gets turned off, I should say, more like, by Notre Dame because of their very restrictive grading requirements on GPAs and stuff like that. And he's going to a school where that is not the situation. So I believe
it's strange though, because is that different?
I think they ask you to spell LSU to get in to the football program. So,
but is that any different than it was 12 years ago when he took the job? Like, what? It's like, I don't understand.
No, but I don't think he realized how difficult it was going to be.
I mean, that's just unbelievably naive on his part. And
maybe. And
it worked for him for 12 years.
But I think he knows. I think he's really like, it's like he knows he can get enough talent at LSU with the same coaching staff and show up and beat Alabama because they'll have the horses there to do it.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I guess it's clear that the money was the deciding factor, and that's also why the horrific timing of it. Really what this comes down to is National Signing Day. The early signing day is December 15th. So LSU demanded that he come right away so he could get to work on that, because he'd miss half his recruiting class for next year. So that's why I think there's a few things that I think happened. We saw what's his fuck from Oklahoma sign with, suddenly go to USC, where it sounded like LSU thought they were in the running. And so all of a sudden they were caught with their pants down and just backed up the truck for the next best guy maybe not even the next best guy, but the next guy that would accept their $100 million. And that was Brian Kelly. So, we like you said, you're probably not surprised because he's done this before. In fact, he's done this to my alma mater 15 years ago, Central Michigan University. He left in the middle of the night in a very similar situation to go to Cincinnati. That isn't nearly as crazy to understand, because I know that Central Michigan is a stepping stone school. He moved to Cincinnati, who had had a shot at some real bowl games where Central Michigan never did, no matter what. And he did a tremendous job for my Chippewas, winning a shit ton of games and going to 2 bowl games. So I can't complain there. But it's just shocking that the perception now is that Notre Dame is an intermediary step to get to a real job. So suddenly Notre Dame looks like a stepping stone school, which I don't think anyone's ever thought of them that way. So I think that's what a lot of the vitriol towards Brian Kelly is. It's really shattered the perception of Notre Dame now, which is may or may not be the correct way to look at it, but it seems like the reality at the moment.
I don't perceive it that way, but okay. I mean, I don't.
Well, you see why I'm saying that, though. He thinks that LSU is a better job. So, I mean,
no, he thinks that LSU is at least a job that's going to pay him more money,
and like you said, easier to get to a national championship.
Yeah, I believe that. I believe any school outside of Notre Dame, pretty much except for Northwestern, is probably easier school to get to a national championship. That is in there. That is in the hunt every year.
I guess I would define that as by definition a stepping stone. Then you work.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, if a stepping stone school gets to the national championship, gets into the playoff over and over again, then yeah, I think of a stepping stone school more as one that is a school where you get you get the team to overperform, and they're not in the national spotlight as much.
I guess
Notre Dame is a national spotlight school, so
I get that. I guess it's just I'm probably being too harsh on this, but I'm making a joke a little more serious than it is, but it's just kind of jarring, I guess, for the national landscape, because you never thought of Notre Dame that way at all, and they have been in the hunt throughout their history for national championships. You've only made the playoffs one time, though, haven't you?
No, we've made the college playoff at least twice.
Oh, I thought it was once.
No, at least twice, if not 3 times, and has lost every time.
Well, yeah, I mean, Michigan State's made it once and got destroyed by Alabama, so I understand that side of it. But well, I think that might as well lead into our discussion of the playoff, unless you had more angst you want to shed.
No, I'm reading the details of the contract, and when I saw this interest-free loan thing, I'm like, what the fuck? I mean, what is this guy doing? Like, why does he need an interest-free loan? To your point, it probably is. It's probably he got wind, whoever manages him or whatever, it was like, Saban got an interest-free loan to buy a mansion in Alabama. You should ask for it too.
How many $1 million homes are in Alabama and Louisiana anyway?
Well, that's the other thing. I think the 1.2 million is going to cover.
That was underhanded on my part. I'm sorry.
Cover it all.
Yeah. Well, congratulations to Brian Kelly. You have a bunch of money and cemented your reputation as someone never to be trusted.
Yes, exactly.
I'm wondering what LSU thinks about how long he's going to stay there, if he's really going to be there the full 10 years, or if he finds some other place to go. Probably to the pros at some point, if they pay him some more money. I
mean, you wonder if, you wonder if, if it doesn't go well, and after like year 5, who will be looking to get out? Will it not just be Brian Kelly? Will the school be like, shit, we fucked up on this thing?
We can only hope.
And I guess the next question will be who is Notre Dame going to get? But we don't have to get into that today.
I think we should get into that a little bit. I mean, the immediate speculation was one of my funniest scenarios for the playoffs, actually, is Luke Fickell from Cincinnati himself, that he would be an early candidate. I've heard Urban Meyer might be a candidate.
I've heard that was one of the immediate ones.
He has said in the past that he thinks of 3 places that he would want to coach would be Ohio State, Michigan, and Notre Dame. And he crossed one of those off his list. Unfortunately, he is gainfully employed right now by the Jacksonville Jaguars. I wonder how much he's regretting that decision.
Well, and the Jaguars aren't extremely happy with his off the field incident.
Yes, so. I'm sure. Although that would be more digestible by an NFL team than Notre Dame could handle that right now.
That is true. That is true.
I don't know. Back to the Luke Fickell thing. I mean, how ridiculous would that be if Notre Dame does make the playoffs somehow, which is a scenario that could happen this weekend, and they end up in the playoff without a coach, but then they poach the coach of a team that is in the playoffs in Cincinnati with Luke Fickell. And that
maybe they play Cincinnati in the playoff and Fickell walks across at halftime.
The dramatic walk across the field.
Yeah. Like those weird scenarios we did on the other podcast where players got traded in a double header.
Yeah.
And just went to the other dugout. Yeah. Yeah. And this is unprecedented. Fickell is crossing. He's ripped off his shirt and is wearing a Notre Dame shirt under a Cincinnati shirt.
Oh, that would be That would be incredible. That's all.
That would be now that's entertainment right there.
It would. I mean, that would be the scenario where Notre Dame couldn't beat them, so just take their coach. I mean, that's perfect.
We're just gonna take you
in dramatic fashion at halftime. I like.
Oh, you know what's going on here in Chicago? They're saying, "Why don't you take Matt Nagy away from the Chicago Bears?"
That's the third candidate I've heard, which is hilarious. Yeah, it's a bunch of wishful thinking from Bears fans that they could get Matt Nagy off their hands, and maybe Notre Dame would just take him. Somehow I don't think Matt Nagy is going to be employed very much longer by the Bears or anyone else. But we'll get into that later on. So we might as well talk about the college football rankings that came out on Tuesday night.
It kind of went
on a Wednesday.
Went kind of like we thought.
It went pretty much like we thought, but I think there's still some serious injustice and some serious bias towards Alabama, which just drives me fucking crazy.
Yeah, the fact that they remain number 3.
Yeah, despite looking as pathetic as I've seen any top 10 team this year.
Oh my God, they did not. Auburn blitzed and they could not handle it.
Yeah, 6-6 Auburn held Alabama scoreless through 51 minutes, I think it was, and held them only 3 points through 59 minutes and 30 some seconds. As Alabama's finally able to tie up the game and send it to 4 overtimes to finally prevail. That coupled with, they've already lost a game this year. I just don't understand why they keep getting so much love. I would put them as the least, the lowest ranked of our one-loss teams. Let's back up. We can go to just to list the committee's top 6. Of course, Georgia, Michigan moved up to number 2 from out of nowhere.
I do not understand that one either.
I understand. Maybe I
no.
I knew it was going to happen. Actually,
that makes no sense to me though.
Well,
how they go from 5 to 2 just because they beat 2? They're saying they're the 5th best team in the country. Then they beat Ohio State at home, not on the road, so at home. And that deserves just like you just swap them out, and then Ohio State just like falls to 10 or whatever, or 7.
Yeah. I guess I'm not surprised by that. I can see why you'd bristle at that. I think the only team that I would move ahead of them right now is Cincinnati. And that's what we've done. That's what we've done all year in our Limp Six.
Right, exactly.
We've made Georgia number 1, Cincinnati number 2 because they're both undefeated, and Cincinnati, of course, has the best road win of any team in the top 6, beating Notre Dame. So I think that's where I'd put Michigan at number 3. But it sounds like would you put them that high?
Oh yeah, I put them at number 3.
Okay,
I just don't agree with like, okay, you beat Ohio State, so now you swap spots. But I mean, it just doesn't make. If you look, they lost to Michigan State.
I did look at that.
It was right.
Fun.
No, I know. Yeah, they lost to Michigan State. If you look at that, and then you go in and you beat Ohio State, who obviously you hadn't beaten under Harbaugh or something like 10 years even too. But still, like I just don't see how that's an automatic swap, and how Cincinnati continues, because they're kind of crashing the party right now because they haven't lost in the way they're looking at it and counting their TV dollars. That's
part of it. But the committee has always shown they're reluctant to give credit to any group of 5 schools.
Yes.
So
that's
so they'll always give the benefit of the doubt to the Big Ten or the SEC in that. At number, so I'd have. So
we're in agreement so far.
Yeah, I'd put Michigan at number 3. So at number 4 is where it gets tricky, where I've already put Alabama at number 6. So 4 and 5 is where we've got Oklahoma State and Notre Dame. And I guess Oklahoma State was impressive. That game was fucking fun to watch. Bedlam versus Oklahoma after they lost just before they lost their coach the next morning. I would say that's a better win than Notre Dame has had this year. I mean, Notre Dame's best win is Wisconsin, who's not in the top 25 anymore. But I still would put Notre Dame ahead of Alabama at least. So I'd keep Notre Dame at number 5. Do you agree with Oklahoma State moving ahead of Notre Dame? I mean, that puts them number 4, which puts them in the playoff.
I don't totally have a problem with it. I don't think their win over Oklahoma is that impressive because Oklahoma hasn't been that impressive this year, and they barely beat them.
Yeah, I mean, the committee thinks they are. That's why. That's why they're up there.
Let's be honest. The committee is fucking bullshit. Okay,
well,
they're big stack of bullshit, and they're sitting there, and they're literally looking at what is going to generate the most money for college football, which is fine, great, but that is why Alabama holds the 3 spot right now.
Well, fuck them. We made them number 6.
Because when Georgia beats them this weekend, this allows them to then they don't have to fall out of the top 10 or anything like that.
Well, hopefully they'll fall out of the top 4 at least, because I do not think they deserve to be a playoff team at all. But let's get back to 4 and 5 for us. Are you making the argument that Notre Dame should be ahead of Oklahoma State?
No, I'm not saying that's necessary. It's not something I would, to quote you often during these conversations, I'm not going to die on a sword for that argument because I would say overall, I think Oklahoma State's schedule, when I went back and looked at it, they definitely have had more quality wins probably over. Well, I guess if you look at teams ranked at the time, I didn't go back and look at where they are now because it just shows you what they're ranked when you played them.
Well, they beat Baylor. They beat Baylor and they beat Oklahoma, so that's pretty damn good.
Yeah, it's pretty damn good. That's more than Notre Dame can say. So,
so then we've got it. So we're pretty much agree. So we'd move Alabama to 6 to get them out of the picture.
Which they'll be out of the picture anyway. So
well, and that's where it comes down to. All these rankings, again, all year long, all these rankings have just been for clickbait and for television dollars, just for pure entertainment, because none of these matter until next week. The selection show happens next Sunday, where we've got conference championship games is all we have left. Notre Dame does not have a game to move up. Ohio State doesn't have a game. They have not made the Big Ten championship game for the first time in like 6 years. So we've got a scenario where Notre Dame has a chance to get into this playoff, but they need some help. And I think the first place they really need it is from Cincinnati. They need Cincinnati to lose to Houston, which I think is possible. Is it the American Conference, American Athletic? I don't even know what the conference. It used to be Conference USA.
Yeah.
I think Houston could beat them, but of course I thought SMU was going to beat them a couple weeks ago, and that didn't happen. So I think that's the best case. That's the easiest one of the chaos scenarios that could help Notre Dame in. I think we definitely need Georgia just to beat the shit out of Alabama, just to get them out of the picture. If Alabama plays close and loses even, that's going to give like you said, the committee to give them an excuse to put Alabama in the playoff somehow. And I'm sick of it. I don't think Georgia has I don't think Alabama has a shot. So if that's the blowout that I think it is, Alabama's out of the picture. So that helps Notre Dame. But I'm wondering if Oklahoma State wins, they've got to be in the playoff if they win the Big 12 championship. Michigan wins their championship, I think they're in. So I think that's the scenario that's where I think the most plausible way Notre Dame gets in is if Cincinnati loses. I don't know. Have you?
Yeah, they need a lot of help because you've got to give it as long as Oklahoma State wins, you've got to put them in over Notre Dame. Well, the question is, if Oklahoma State wins, what does that do to Cincinnati too? Like wonder.
That would have to bump Cincinnati below them. I mean, the resume is so much more impressive at that point for Oklahoma State.
Yeah, that's what and that was why I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to argue Oklahoma State jumping ahead of Notre Dame by any stretch. So, I mean, what really needs to happen for Notre Dame is Iowa needs to play their greatest football game of the year, and you never know. And like you said, Cincinnati needs to lose, and then it pretty much turns into a no-brainer for the committee at that point.
Well, then we've got close to anarchy. If Michigan loses and all those other scenarios play out, it's hard to say who would even be. If Oklahoma State loses, Notre Dame is in. In any chaos scenario, Notre Dame goes in because they're not even playing this week, so things just fall out of their way.
But yeah, don't you kind of think if Michigan loses, even if Michigan lost and Alabama lost, don't you think it's Oklahoma State and Notre Dame both move in?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, but the thing about Notre Dame is they have to have two losses. I feel they have to have two losses in there to really get it.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Outside of the Alabama loss,
That's where I want Alabama to get crushed.
That's why they need either Cincy or Michigan to lose, just like you had said. I mean, I'm in agreement with you that is what's going to have to happen. The beauty of it, as I was feverishly texting you the other night, is the playoff committee. They're not a bunch. We know they're not idiots. They're not idiots in the way that they're going to manage what's going to be great for college football. And even if Notre Dame doesn't get into the playoff, they have now set up scenarios where you can see a matchup still of, like we talked about already, Notre Dame and Michigan State could be a possible bowl game.
Oh, that's
a huge draw,
Bowl.
Right? That's a huge TV draw.
That would be the Limp Six Bowl right there.
Yeah, that's a classic matchup we don't see on a regular basis like we used to, which used to be a lot more fun for us.
Thanks a lot.
You also got another scenario of where you get Alabama Notre Dame too. So they have set this up in such a way that college football, even without Alabama in the playoff, still gets its due and gets its payday. You know what I'm saying? So, and I did go back and look at. I understand now why the Big Ten is weighted so heavily and gets so much respect.
The RPI stuff you were quoting before?
No, not the RPI stuff. I went back and looked at the TV shares for every week in college football.
Yeah.
And Big Ten, boy, do they hold a lot of the top 10 share. They hold some crazy matchups like Nebraska, Ohio State had like an 8.9, like the best share of the week. It's like, who fucking cares? But so they bring
lots of TVs.
They bring in a lot of TV revenue. And you also do have you have weeks where Alabama, the Alabama matchups number one or Georgia matchups number one. But then so you had weeks where Notre Dame also was the most viewed college football games. But so it made even more sense to me now why you saw this wow, we have all these Big Ten teams in the top 25, right? And I'll continue to say until we get back to something that has less human involvement, that will always have a play in how these decisions are made.
Well, we should definitely go back to by next week after the selection show has committed their atrocities. You should bring up that RPI ranking or that site you were referencing.
The final RPI ranking.
And what they would say the top 4 or top 6 teams would be. That'd be fun to watch. Fun to check out how it compares.
I'll check the RPI site as well as the what the computer would have done on the final ranking too. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned TV rankings, as that is definitely a factor, whether it's overt or covert. The Michigan-Ohio State game was the highest rated game.
I mean, I was tuned in the entire time.
Yeah, it was incredible. Michigan State had this season's highest ratings until that game. So Michigan seems to be the common denominator there, but that game was a fucking blast. The nice part of it is I would have been just as happy if Michigan lost as if Ohio State lost. I was looking forward to that game just for the spectacle, and they provided all of it. I think it's kind of a good scenario. Obviously, we are united by our hatred for the University of Michigan, but in that scenario, I mean, we both hate Ohio State almost equally as much, if not equally as much. But it's just kind of nice to have that classic rivalry kind of be a rivalry again, because when Ohio State wins 10 in a row, how do you call that a fucking rivalry anymore? That's the classic hammer versus nail rivalry, which is not a rivalry. So I kind of like that idea that, Michigan finally wins it. So now going forward, there's some hope that these games will continue to be really good and not be so predictable going in the way the whole world, I think, thought that Michigan was going to get trounced. Michigan held strong. They were pretty impressive, especially on defense. They really control the game on the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. So they still gave up like 400 yards passing.
Yeah. But
they could run the ball at will. I saw
that's what was amazing.
They controlled the whole second half that way. I saw a crazy stat that I'm not sure is true, but Michigan never had a third down play in the second half. They'd get first or second downs. They'd get the first down on first or second down every time. So they just controlled the ball the whole second half and suffocated them. As I made the joke, like with 7 minutes to go, can Jim Harbaugh choke away a 15-point lead here, like he did against Michigan State? But that was, of course, halfway through the third quarter instead of halfway through the fourth quarter. But he did not choke it away, and they came away with a victory. So, whatever. Again, I would have been just as happy if Ohio State won. It was just a fun game to watch because I didn't really care about the outcome, other than this is kind of a cool scenario that rivalry might be interesting going forward. I think equally interesting were some of the shit talk before and after the game between the coaches. I don't know if you heard this. This is a big deal in Michigan, maybe not quite as nationally, but certainly a big deal in Ohio. I can tell you that. Jim Harbaugh, after the game, who's known for his odd quotes or using weird cliches in odd situations, said some people are born on third and think they hit a triple, which we've all heard that phrase many times. But he was referring to Ohio State coach Ryan Day, mainly taking a jab at him because Ohio State was such an incredible program, and Ryan Day walked in 3 years ago and just inherited it.
Right.
There's a quote from last year that wasn't necessarily wasn't necessarily supposed to be made public, but Ryan Day said, "Well, go ahead. We'll hang 100 on Michigan next year." I think that's when the COVID Michigan canceled the game because of a COVID outbreak last year.
Oh, right.
So there's some history there, but just some stupid back and forth. But I find it hilarious and ironic, and especially funny that the irony is lost on people like Jim Harbaugh and any Michigan grad that like that quote. The phrase "you're born on third and think you hit a triple" is the perfect way to describe Jim Harbaugh and the Michigan Wolverines and any Michigan University of Michigan person. They are the elite. They are the blue bloods that think their shit doesn't stink. So I just found it hilarious that I couldn't figure out when I first saw the quote. Like, some people think they were born on third and hit a triple. Like, that's you, Jim. That is every Wolverine out there. So I found that funny. I also saw on social media, like, people wearing t-shirts, Michigan versus everybody in maize and blue, playing the underdog card.
Oh,
like
God.
they're the downtrodden. That's a version of a classic t-shirt in Detroit versus everybody. That stems from the city of Detroit being shit on nationally. It has not the greatest reputation, but we have pride in our city, and that city's actually made a big turnaround in the last 10 years. But
yeah, I was gonna say, like, both of our cities here with the pop that goes on here in Chicago. I mean, we've both earned earned our
blue collar.
Blue collar and people shitting on it. We've kind of earned it by the way it's covered in the national media. But I totally understand and respect the idea of all of Detroit like that, but not fucking Ann Arbor.
Yeah, Michigan,
you're like the fucking elitists enjoying your fucking wine before the game.
Yeah, the wine and
Shut
cheese.
Shut the fuck up, you whiners. You want some cheese with your wine, you little bitches? Come on.
So those things just made me laugh. Like just the self-delusion, the lack of self-awareness made me chuckle. So,
I mean, good God.
Congratulations to Michigan for winning your big game. But you clearly make the rest of us laugh as you have no idea you're standing in the world. Mel Tucker, the bad motherfucker, or the bad mother Tucker, as I like to call him, signed a big deal this last week. Actually, 1 week ago tonight, he finally signed the rumored 10-year, $95 million deal, $5 million less than Brian Kelly. I don't know if that's
which it was originally reported at 10 years, 95. So he probably was like, I deserve more than Mel Tucker,
and $1.2 million for a house. And I'm not sure Mel Tucker got. So congratulations to Mel.
He's a better money manager.
That went into the big Penn State game, as mentioned before, the land grant trophy. That trophy, I don't know if the Big Ten is ridiculous about trophies in general. The little brown jug, and
I think college football kind of is. You sometimes don't even notice, and then like you've seen this matchup for years, and you're like, oh, they're playing for a trophy in this, and you're just like, that's so random.
Yeah. I feel like the Big Ten has cornered the market on that. I mean, they've got every rivalry has some kind of trophy associated. Paul Bunyan's trophy for Michigan State. Paul Bunyan's axe between, I think that's Minnesota and Wisconsin. The little brown jug between Michigan and Minnesota, which I've never fully understood. The brass spittoon. What is that? Is that Purdue? I don't even know now, but the land grant trophy might be the most ridiculous of all of them between Michigan and Penn State. Apparently both states were granted statehood through land grants, or there's some commonality with land grants in their history. Nobody cares. I believe the history is that George Perlis, former Michigan State coach, Michigan State great Rose Bowl winning coach, he made it up basically and created the trophy. And I guarantee you've never seen this trophy, because I think they try to not show it as much as they can, because it is the dumbest looking trophy you have ever seen. It looks like a deranged junior high shop class project. It's literally it's like a rectangle box with like little weird shelves coming off randomly off it with like shitty like I'm not even joking. It's like little trophies, like
I'm gonna have to look this up now.
Yeah, like the classic $10 trophy you'd get for playing a soccer game, just kind of randomly placed around it. So, and I don't know why they do it. I think George Perlis was just a weird guy, but he wanted it's a big ass trophy too. So he wanted to make sure like it was not a spindly little thing that it was not easy to carry around the field, I guess was his point. But I don't know. It's bizarre, but so. You could call it the land battle for the land grant trophy, or since James Franklin also signed a 10-year extension with Penn State last week, you could call it the 10-year extension belt or trophy or what have you. We've kind of made fun of James Franklin for a while on this show, and I'm not really sure why he has a job, why he is getting a 10-year extension for doing that job. He's now finished 4-5 in the Big Ten for this losing record for the second year in a row. He's 7-5 this year. So how does that guy get a 10-year extension? I've seen it reported as 75 million or 85 million. Regardless, it's an insane amount of money for a very mediocre coach.
Well, I mean, if you're looking at it from Penn State's point of view, he's got no shower misconduct or anything like that. So, the bar set kind of low there. They're just happy that there's not any negative press coming to the school.
That dude's set for life for being as mediocre as it gets.
Did he know he was playing Michigan State this weekend?
He did know that, but apparently he did not know that Michigan State had the worst secondary in all of college football. As I mentioned last week, the last few weeks, I think they've had the worst secondary. The yardage given up was to the point where in their final game against Penn State this week, they could have given up 0 yards and they would still lead the nation in worst pass defense. Somehow that message didn't get to James Franklin as he continued to try to run the ball in the second half and pissed away an opportunity to beat Michigan State on the road. It was unbelievable because they were throwing the ball in the first half and they were making some incredible catches in really adverse conditions. I'll get to that in a minute, but basically State, stepped up, got business done, pretty much how they've always done it with a balanced offense and just enough defense to get it done. They won 30-27. Kenneth Walker III had another 138 yards and a touchdown. I'm wondering, that brings up the question, like, does he get back in the Heisman race? It was reported this week he did not practice at all. And it makes you think about what was happening last week. He had the flu, and it was not reported until late last week that he did miss all the week's practice. Yet he was able to come back and run, like I said, for 138 yards and a touchdown. Makes you wonder if he was under the weather, possibly against Ohio State the week previous, as he uncharacteristically only had 6 carries and 20 some yards. So I'm wondering, I'm obviously going to give him a mulligan because I'm a Michigan State fan. I don't know if the Heisman voting committee will do the same, but it's just that game was such an anomaly against Ohio State, and he was so poor, and then came right back to life the next week. So he is among the leaders in rushing. I think he's the second leading rusher in the nation. I'll get to who is the first in our Maction Minute coming up, but I don't know. I thought with CJ Stroud, he did throw for 400 yards against Michigan, but they did lose the game. Obviously, I forgot Alabama's quarterback's name, but he was horrendous until the last minute of the game, basically, where Auburn gave it to him. So I'm hoping that Kenneth Walker III moves his way back into the Heisman conversation.
What I didn't understand going into that Michigan State-Penn State game is why Penn State was the favorite.
I didn't see that they were maybe I didn't pay attention. I guess maybe just because State was beaten so badly against Ohio State.
It was just strange. I looked up the line and Penn State was a -5.
Yikes. Well, I think that speaks to what a big win that really is. It is just Penn State, and I kind of make fun of them, and they are barely over 500 and under 500 in the conference. But that was a huge comeback for Michigan State and Mel Tucker. As embarrassing as the Ohio State loss was, how that could maybe spiral, and certainly, the next week, how those that much of an embarrassment could send the program spiraling and be really embarrassing for a coach that just signed such a historic deal to lose his final 2 games of the year. So I really think that's a big deal for State to win that game. It's their 10th win of the season. The first time they've won 10 games since 2017, I believe. So it's a cool thing. They're obviously going to a big bowl game. We talked about that earlier. They have a chance to go maybe to the Fiesta Bowl is the rumor. Super cool for Mel Tucker's second year. So I think that's awesome. Again, it's I keep propping up what a big win that is. It is just Penn State, but I think it was a really crucially important win for the program. So go green. I mentioned the leading rushers in the country, and that would lead me to our Maction Minute for the week. And this might be a little more than a minute, as it involves my Central Michigan Chippewas, who beat Eastern Michigan on Friday to take the Michigan MAC Trophy, is what they refer to it. There are 3 teams in the MAC from Michigan, Eastern, Central, and Western. And Central, for the second year in a row, beat the other two. So we've got the MAC Michigan trophy, whatever that is. It's in the shape of Michigan, so it makes more sense at least than the land grant trophy. But they did that on the back again of Lew Nichols III, the leading rusher in the nation for 2021. Believe it or not, your Central Michigan Chippewas have the leading rusher in the nation with 1,710 yards. He also leads the country in all-purpose yards with 2,010. He's 10th in the nation in touchdowns with 15, I believe. So an impressive year for Lew Nichols III, freshman running back. At any other school he'd have a shot at the Heisman Trophy, but that's not going to happen from a MAC team, unfortunately. But who knows? Maybe if he keeps this pace up, maybe he'll start getting more of a national following. If Central rides that to close to undefeated records, we might be getting some national attention. I'm getting ahead of myself a bit, but he was also the MAC's Offensive Player of the Year they named today. To go along with that, Khalil Pimpleton, who I've mentioned before, finished as the MAC Special Teams Player of the Year. So there's a lot of talent happening going on up in Mount Pleasant these days. So that's all I've got for the Max in Minute as your eyes are glazing over. I had to pump. Are we still doing the
podcast?
Had to pump up my alma mater as these accolades are rarely seen for the Chippewas. So congrats. Fire up.
Ooh, I feel like after that we need to take a break.
That was a Maction 2 minute. Sorry about that. So yeah, let's go ahead and take a break and come back with our thoughts on the Thanksgiving weekend in the professional ranks. So we'll be right back here on the Word Hole Media Network.
Word Hole Media.
Major League A-Holes in the Hole podcast, where baseball opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one and most of them stink. Find us at MajorLeagueAholes.com and anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Word Hole Media.
Hey, welcome back to the Limp Six podcast, and we are going to cover the Thanksgiving Day recap for this podcast, who has the unique claim to fame that both of our teams always play on Thanksgiving, good or bad.
We've got to be the only, I think I mentioned this last week, we've got to be the only podcast that focuses on the Lions. There aren't many podcasts that focus on the Lions, but Lions plus the Cowboys, that's kind of a bizarre scenario. So we have to own Thanksgiving. And unfortunately, we did not own Thanksgiving on any way, but
no, the Cowboys came up just short on Thanksgiving for their fourth loss of the year. 3 of those can be phrased as coming up just short.
Yeah. I thought you had the best game of the day, though, at least. I mean, that was a compelling game. It was fun.
Yeah. Obviously the injuries on defense are starting to catch up with the Cowboys a little bit as the Raiders were kind of able to run and pass and kind of do whatever they pretty much wanted, it seemed like, from an offensive standpoint. The Cowboys, and speaking of offense, the Cowboys offense took a little while to get going, and they finally did, and it was a game, and it was an exciting game. It was a fun game, obviously, for anyone just watching and wanting to enjoy a Thanksgiving Day game. Unfortunately, Cowboys came up short, so it wasn't terribly enjoyable for me. But
I found the only part I found not enjoyable, other than feeling bad for you on a holiday, 28 penalties called in that game. I mean, it was unreal how much the referees were involved in that. It was horrific. It had no flow to it. It was bizarre. Like how much I don't know if there. I didn't notice that one team was being favored over another necessarily. I don't know if you perceived it that way, but just too many penalties in general.
Well, it was the most interesting. Again, whatever. The Cowboys should have won the game. End of story. But Anthony Brown, our cornerback, hadn't had a flag thrown on him all year, and he had 4 thrown on him in that game. So that was interesting. A couple of them, at least two of them, I would say were deserved. But whatever. Usually it all evens out. The Cowboys, I do remember seeing a stat at one point. The Cowboys have been penalized for 115 yards, and the Raiders have been penalized for like 50. But I mean, the Cowboys have been penalized a lot this year, though. So that to me didn't shock me.
Okay.
They have a lot of false starts on their offensive line, and they shoot themselves in the foot a lot, especially in the red zone. And it catches up with you. And but the Raiders did get to move the ball downfield on a couple of like long pass interferences that were called against Brown. So anyway, I mean, the Cowboys again were without their top two receivers, but like I said, that's what kind of took the offense a little bit to get going.
Cooper would be coming back next week because he's only out because of COVID.
Tomorrow.
Oh, I forgot they're playing Thursday night.
Yeah, then they get their mini bye week finally. They get 10 days off, and there's some good news about tomorrow night against the Saints. You get CeeDee Lamb and as you pointed out, Amari Cooper will be back, but also DeMarcus Lawrence is coming back. So we finally got one of our starting edge rushers in the game.
Your coach will not be coming back.
Our coach won't be there because COVID continues to sneak around the Cowboys facility. And the good news, at least he's vaccinated, so he can, go through the normal protocol. Unlike Cooper had no choice in the matter. He had to miss the 2 days at a minimum, the 2 games at a minimum because of them being within
14-day protocol.
Yeah. So, but after this week, when the Cowboys go to play the Washington Redskins, they will be what looks to be at 100% on the defensive line. Early season injury to one of the defensive tackles, Gilmore. He is back this week, but he's not going to be cleared to play till the following week. So over that 10-day period, by the time they face off against the Redskins, which is, I was saying like when we roll into December, the Cowboys are going to be really healthy from a defensive standpoint, which should help them just clean up the NFC East. Which was funny that they lost again, but then Philly lost to the Giants. So like the Cowboys really didn't lose any ground by losing. Because Philly and the Redskins are their two closest opponents there. But it would seem that for the first time this season, they're going to probably take the field in that Washington game at pretty much 100%. So they will have some issues this week. Obviously, not having your head coach there probably can lead to an issue. You hope that I know Dan Quinn's going to kind of be part of the regime, kind of watching, and I think they're going to be making sort of like group decisions. A couple of the coaches, so
not ideal.
No, we'll see how that goes. They also won't have Tristan Hill for the game because he punched a Raider after the game. He kind of waited for someone who had an issue with the entire game and decided to punch him. So he was suspended for 2 games. He appealed. This moves a lot faster than we see in baseball. He actually appealed, and they heard the appeal prior to the Thursday game. What a shocking development.
Wow.
And he lost a game, so he's only going to lose 1 game. So I guess he's sitting out the Saints game. So they'll be without him. So we'll see. Kamara is supposed to be coming back, I think, for the Saints. So that will make this game a lot more interesting, especially when your starting interior isn't there due to suspension and still from injury. So could still be again, I know they're going to, I think playing in New Orleans, while that helps New Orleans, I think it helps the Cowboys too because of how fast their receiving core is. And now you'll have Cooper, Lamb, and Gallup all on the field for the first time this year.
Oh, wow. For a whole year.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
So that should be fun to watch. That is going to be a lot of the ability to throw the deep ball should be available to the Cowboys.
Well, I'll be watching Thursday Night Football.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know about you, but my Thanksgiving tradition for my family, my entire life, is Thanksgiving lunch, essentially. We always have our Thanksgiving dinner at 12:30 or so, depending on when the turkey's done. Do you do an evening dinner? You probably do a lunch too, so you can focus on your Cowboys that are always in the late afternoon.
I know, yeah. Usually, actually,
it vary?
It's usually about 3:30, actually.
Okay.
So it's usually during the game.
Well, my whole life, our Thanksgiving dinner is during the first half of the Lions game, and that might be by design by my folks, 30, 40 years ago. And we've continued that tradition on, and I don't mind because I get to miss a lot of parts of pathetic Lions games. So I appreciate that. And this past Thursday was no different, as it doesn't get more pathetic than losing to the Chicago Bears. Especially in the manner in which they lost, 16-14. The Lions, when they play on Sunday, this coming Sunday, they will have gone 364 days without a victory. I thought that was an incredible stat.
Wow.
They have not won their last 15 games. They do have a tie in there, but they have not won their last 15 games. And that span is 364 days. Of course, that is the longest in the NFL currently. Just another frustrating Lions game to watch. A little bit of indigestion. I watched most of the second half. I did see in the first half, the Lions scored on their opening drive, which was encouraging. DeAndre Swift was running the ball as he has been until he went out with a shoulder injury, and it looked pretty damn severe. And it's just like, of course, the one good thing the Lions have going for him. It sounds like he is going to be out multiple weeks, is the quote right now. I'm not really sure what that means. That we don't have that many weeks left in the season, so he might be out for the whole season. I didn't see if it was a shoulder separation. I thought it was maybe a broken collarbone, but it looked ugly. Another unfortunate, the only positives we've got, they all go to shit. The main thing with the Lions this season is the scrutiny of Coach Dan Campbell. I like to call him Danimal Cannibal. He did not make himself any allies, I guess you could put it this week. He gave a lot of fuel to the enemy, as he did not cover himself in glory or look like a competent NFL coach in many ways. I've been reluctant to give him shit. Play calling was a major issue last week. I've been reluctant to criticize play calls from any coach just because there are so many of them in any game. The vast majority, if you win, they work. If you lose, if one doesn't work, you're in trouble. You don't know the what's happening. I was questioning the philosophy last week of a 3rd and long draw play where you're essentially giving up, especially in that scenario where their only chance was to throw the ball and to possibly complete it, but then they followed up with a punt after a third and long draw play. Well, the Lions not only had 2 3rd and long draw plays, they were 3rd and 32 yards, which you never run across a 3rd and 32, let alone 2 of those in the same game. And the Lions ran 2 draw plays off of those, or at least 1 draw play. Maybe it wasn't a draw play in the second one, but the idea that Dan Campbell is still running a draw play on 3rd and long is hilarious to me. But that's a minor discretion considering what happened when the game was at its crux in the 4th quarter, as the Bears were methodically driving down the field, trailing the Lions, believe it or not, 14-13, and the Lions could not get them off the field for the last 8 minutes. Part of that was because of the complete ineptitude of the coaching staff, and whether you blame the the defensive coordinator or Dan Campbell, somebody fucked up in the final minute of the game where not one, but 2 timeouts were called, which is a penalty in National Football League, when the defense could not line up. You call the first timeout to set up your defense on a critical 3rd down against a pretty mediocre Bears offense. Apparently that no one was listening, or mixed messages were sent during that first timeout because they were unable to line up properly coming out of a fucking timeout. At which point the Lions coaching staff compounded their errors and folly by calling a second timeout. And there's a bunch of problems with that. First of all, it's inept. It's also not understanding the situation. After the game, Dan Campbell was quoted saying it was either call a timeout or give up a touchdown. And honestly, with 30 some seconds left at that point, that was your only way you would possibly win the game, as the Bears were already inside the 10, is if you gave up the touchdown there so you would get the ball back and have a chance at least to go down the field and kick a field goal. When you essentially call a timeout to save the touchdown, you are giving them 3rd and short, which they, of course, converted easily. And then we're able to run the clock out and eventually kick the game-winning field goal with no time left. So not only are they inept, they don't understand basic strategy. It is a bit unorthodox, of course, to think to give up a touchdown. There's some illogic to that on the surface. But when your alternative is you are going to lose the game when they just run the clock out, you might as well give up a touchdown and have a chance at least. And that basic fact has escaped Dan Campbell, and it's very frustrating. Again, I say this every fucking week, but the season is meaningless. It's better for the Lions to be losing to ensure that number 1 draft pick next year. But when you have a coach that is signed on for this year and 5 years after this, showing that he's simply unqualified to be an NFL football coach, it's very disconcerting. I like the guy again. I don't know if you've seen interviews with him. I'm sure you've heard the knee biting quotes. Have you ever noticed his voice? I'm definitely piling on here, but his voice, he sounds exactly like Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs.
I'll have to pay closer attention next time.
She a great big fat person. You bought a size 14. You don't know what pain is. I could just see him going. So next time you see Dan Campbell, just think of Buffalo Bill. I think you'll see it immediately. But
I mean, I
lotion on its skin or gets the hose again.
I will tell you, I've read a lot about Dan Campbell this week because this folly, this double timeout was finally the breaking point for everybody in Detroit.
Yeah,
I mean, the coverage that this received locally that ended up in my feed was tremendous by local Detroit press, where kind of exactly what you were saying, like, he's said a lot of the right things, and everyone's kind of, he kind of gets a pass overall on this season because he's coming into a mess and they're not supposed to be winning football games. But to your point, you also don't want to be losing games because you're calling 2 timeouts and then you say something stupid. Like if he had come on after the game and said, it's inexcusable we called 2 timeouts in a row, and the better thing would have been to let them just score the touchdown so our offense could come back, I'd be like, praise Jesus, you guys lost. You lost it for a second in the midst of a game, but you understood what was going on. But coming out and we saw it. There was a game I watched where NFL team let someone score just so the offense could get the ball back and try to win the game. Because essentially, they would have been able to run out the clock otherwise. So, like, I probably is a little bit worrisome for you. But also, is this a scenario where, like, maybe next year we don't really see this at all from him.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Maybe these are just growing pains. Hopefully he'll learn from it, but it doesn't sound like he has, as I lose Pete again.
Yeah.
I just, we'll see, I guess, but it's just doubly infuriating as he loses to an equally incompetent coach in Matt Nagy and the Chicago Bears. I believe this is the second time. I mean, there was rumors going into that game that Matt Nagy would lose his job, whether they won or lost. He has seemed to earn a reprieve by winning, whether you believe those rumors or not. But this would be, I believe, the second time this season that the Lions specifically have saved Matt Nagy's job, as he was on the very hot seat and rumored to be fired in their first matchup in Chicago when he was able to pull out the victory, and then again on Thanksgiving. So I think Bears fans have the Lions to thank for having Matt Nagy remaining their football coach. So
it would have been even funny. It would have been even funnier if Dan Campbell came out and said, "Well, we took those timeouts to let the Bears win, so Nagy wouldn't get fired."
Yeah. That'd be 4-dimensional thinking right there.
Yeah, but
then I'd be impressed. But
speaking on that front, and we thought we were having breaking news, and last week, and he was out for sure. A Pulitzer Prize winning journalist who doesn't even cover sports, kind of in a way put his integrity, reputation out there with this news, and then it all kind of like went away. Then there were reports that came out that the report that Brad Biggs did about them canceling the walkthroughs is not a big deal because it was just a mistake that the second walkthroughs were even scheduled because
that sounds like revisionist history on the Bears' part.
Yeah, that it was normally when there wouldn't be a second walkthrough because it was X amount of days before the game, and they had forgot that the game was on Thursday. Like, I'm like, how do you forget the game was on Thursday?
Yeah, I'm calling BS on that.
Yeah, I'm calling BS on that.
I think the report got out there, and the Bears had to reverse course. I think it was really going to happen, and then it broke in the media 2 days before they were going to pull the trigger, and they couldn't do it. They literally couldn't do it because everyone was privy to it. So I think they're stuck with them now. And this year, at least,
it has been uncharacteristic of the Bears. They normally do wait till the end of the season. That McCaskey organization has always done that. So, the only good news about this is, I don't know if you're aware of all this, the funny stuff that's happening, but at every sporting event in the Chicagoland area, a Fire Nagy chant starts at every Bulls game, at every Hawks game, and even at the Illinois football game. This past weekend, the Fire Nagy chants, or Nagy, is it Nagy? Nagy chants have come out. So it's a consensus in the city that he should not remain the head coach of the Chicago Bear.
Well, to wrap up my kind of Lions coverage, I always have to bring up what's going on with Matthew Stafford and the LA Rams, who
welcome back, Matty.
Dumped their third game in a row.
We've missed you, Matt.
Thanks in part to another subpar performance that Lions fans recognize out of Matt Stafford. He threw his third pick six, third in 3 games. Which I'm not sure if that's happened before, but I know he is now taken sole possession of 6th place on the all-time pick 6 list, taking it from he was tied with Phillip Rivers, and now he has sole possession with 26. I believe Peyton Manning or Drew Brees is next on the list with 27, or they might be tied. I'm not sure. So Stafford is moving up quickly on that list. So. The other incredible stat that I know you would not be aware of, and you were going to be blown away by this, but the Lions actually have, get ready for this.
All right, I'm sitting down.
The Lions have a better record in the month of November than the LA Rams.
Oh, because of the tie.
Yes. The Rams are 0-3. The Lions are 0-2-1. And that is definitely my stat of the week.
We got in between the numbers with Ryan.
Yeah, I don't know what you read into that. it's just, I mean, this is, what's the German term? Freudenfried, but whatever.
Sure.
The term.
Did you say scrotum fried?
Yeah, something like that. God damn it, I forgot that one too. But the delight in the suffering of others. It's partly out of spite that I like seeing Stafford fail. It's partly out of just being annoyed with the incredible, like, the bouquets being thrown towards Matt Stafford in the beginning of the season, when suddenly the whole world realized what Matt Stafford, or thought they realized what Matt Stafford was an MVP candidate. But it was all Detroit's fault that he's been so mediocre his whole career. But it's now kind of turning against him. And it's like I said, this is the Matt Stafford we're familiar with, like making ridiculous decisions and costing his team in the worst case scenarios and in the worst possible moments. Not all the time, I will say that most of the time it's been the Lions' fault, but Matt Stafford is net blameless in the Lions' failure over the past 12 years. And now people are starting to see it rear its same ugly head in Los Angeles. And it's petty of me. It's small of me, but I think it's fucking hilarious. So sorry about that, Matt.
Yeah. I mean, I really did think he was going to win the MVP this year, but he's really, over the last 3 weeks, have completely taken his name out of the contention for that. I mean, and even right before this week's game, there was another article that came out that with like the headline, "We always knew Matt Stafford was good. It's just that he played for the Lions." And that was even after 2 mediocre weeks in a row. And now he topped it off with a third. I am going to, before next week's podcast, I'm going to go back, and I brought up my theory that part of it is McVay too, because I'm quite certain, except for the one season, that the Rams tend to start off fine, but kind of always falter. Like, it's like whatever they're doing, it catches up with them. Like teams catch up to what they're running eventually.
That's interesting.
So I'm going to go back and look at that to see how their Novembers have been under McVay in general. And I think it's not good. If memory serves correctly, because
right.
I also remember Jared Goff was going to be the next greatest quarterback ever in his first couple seasons there. And he just became progressively worse and ended up, with the Lions as kind of like here, we're going to use this guy until we draft our quarterback. So,
well, we'll be getting into the draft soon enough. I did want to bring up the Lions' potential as they have pretty much locked down the number 1 draft pick. There's been lots of talk this week in particular, because of a confluence of events, about who their number 1 pick might be. And due to the incredible performance on Saturday by Michigan's Aiden Hutchinson, a lot of people are talking about him going number 1 to the Lions, right down the road from Ann Arbor into Detroit. I mean, before that, it was Caden, I forget his first name, Thibodeau from Oregon, who was the defensive end that was pretty much the consensus number 1 pick. And he's had some injury issues and hasn't really shown up in really big games for Oregon. But I think overall his probably measurables are a lot of why people have him number 1. But Aiden Hutchinson is definitely on my radar now, and on most people's radar. I think it's a little bit of homerism in that, he's a Michigan guy, but he has been incredible as a defensive end for the Wolverines. So we will definitely get deeper into that as we get closer to the draft. But obviously, as a Lions fan, I basically wrote off this season pretty much before it began, and I'm already looking towards next year's draft. So I'll have plenty to speculate there. But it has been a major thing in the news, mainly just because of the timing of, a lot of people are even saying that Hutchinson should be a Heisman candidate for his dominance on defense this year, which I think is a bit overstated, but we'll see, I guess. So that's all I've got for the NFL this week, unless you had anything else to add.
No, normally right here I'd be doing an upset special,
That's
but
right.
I'm going to take the week off.
Wow.
I looked, folks, I looked up and down. I don't like any of the underdogs this week. It just nothing is there to that stands out to me that says this is not good. I did pick incorrectly as a straight up win this week, as well as it didn't work out for the spread. Indianapolis, and what was also a very entertaining game against Tampa Bay, lost 38-31 at home. They did have a late lead in that one, but the ageless wonder Tom Brady, along with the healthy Gronk, just kind of ended up winning that game over in Indianapolis, which moved me to 6-5-1 straight up. But I did go back and run the numbers. I am 9-3 against the spread this year.
Well, that's what matters.
And I get to take away the tie because the Lions covered that game because with the spread.
I think the Lions have covered the majority of their games this year.
They've had some big spreads that they've been able to cover, like the 11.5 spread that they were able to cover. So a couple weeks ago. So yeah.
So now that I'm thinking about it, maybe your upset special is you're telling people that they should do the 16-team parlay of all favorites this week.
I see now the weekly watcher of football, and a lot of it would say to you that is a fool's bet because there is no way every favorite is going to win this week. But
call me a fool. How do I put five on it for me on your gambling app?
Okay, I'll put 5 on it for you.
At least text me back after this. Tell me what the odds are if I get all 16 in a parlay.
All right, I will put all 16 favorites in and tell you what the payout is.
All right, I'll send you a Venmo or something. See how this works.
We always work these exchanges out. It's fine.
I'll never hear from you again.
Oh, did you? I used my $5 for that bet. Sorry, Smitty.
Well, that's the end of this podcast. Well, that is literally, figuratively, and literally, as I think we can wrap this one up. Episode 27. You can catch us on the web at limpdidkas.com. You can catch us on social media at limpdidkas. You can catch this podcast anywhere you'd like to find a podcast. So with that, I'm going to say this is Dagger Time. We out. Peace.
Peace.
Word Hole Media.